All right. So last time we were talking about stuff, we were just talking about the Huang River Valley. We talked about how there was 4 major river valley civilizations: the Egyptians at the Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates River Valley in Mesopotamia, the Indus in India, and then the Huang over here in China. And we talked about how most of the farming was based on millet and rice. Gonna make a new bullet, if you would please. And we're gonna write down Shang 1700 to 1027 before Common Era. So once again, Shang 1700 through 1027 before Common Era. Remember, before the year 0 is just before Common Era, BCE, or before Christ, BC. And then after year 0 is Common Era, CE, or Anno Domino, AD. So before 0, BCE, BC, after 0, CE, AD. So once again, bullet Shang 1700 to 1027 before Common Era. So we're going to talk a little about the Shang Dynasty here. And the first thing to talk about the Shang Dynasty is calligraphy writing and paper making. Go ahead and make a 1 and write down calligraphy writing and paper making. So in China, calligraphy writing is basically when you're kind of painting the letters, the words. So instead of writing the words, out by pencil and so forth, you would write them with more of a painting style. So it's more like brush strokes and such. It's very arts way of making the words and such. The other thing here is paper making. So they started getting paper making this time period, which was a lot of just kind of weaving the plant fibers together. So you kind of just weave plant fibers together and then use a hammer to kind of smash it down to make yourself paper. Okay. Next thing is once we get to the Shang Dynasty, they're moving away from that mud brick. So, mud brick, we talked about how that was used and how you use dirt, water, and straw to make mud brick. They're moving away from that now. And now they're into just using wood to make their housing. So now they're making houses purely out of wood. Go ahead and make it 2 and write down wood used as a building material. So 2, wood used as a building material. So we're done kind of using mud brick now. By the time we get to the Shang Dynasty, now we're into making buildings purely out of wood. The Shang had also figured out how to get into Bronze Age as well. So they've also gone to the Bronze Age, which meant they were making tools out of bronze. So they started making tools out of bronze. And that also helped them to cut down trees and such. So they could actually, cut down the tree, flatten out logs, and start using them to start making houses purely out of wood. So we're going to write down next thing, 3 bronze weapons. So we are into the Bronze Age now, and they are using bronze weapons, which again, kind of helps them to cut down trees and actually start making buildings purely out of wood instead of using mud brick. So we're advancing in technology. You can see down here, these are a couple of pictures of this kind of stuff in this time period. On the left-hand side there, that's a cooking cauldron. So that's a cooking cauldron there on the left-hand side. In the very center, that's an axe. You can see it's got a nice happy face on it. And then on the right-hand side, that is a toilet. Kind of creepy, I guess, because it has a face on it. I don't really want to watch anybody watch me when I'm going to the toilet, but nonetheless. All right. Now, instead of making paper, because making paper was kind of difficult, to weave the plant fibers together and then smash it all down. Instead of using paper, sometimes they would just write stuff on a bone. So this is called the oracle bone. It's really just a chicken bone that they wrote the writing on. So that's really all that is. But sometimes oracle bones were used for telling the future, consulting the gods. So they write various things on the bones and then shake them up and put them on the ground. So that was something that was pretty common that they would do. But also people would kind of just write stuff on the bones instead of using paper. Because paper took a long time to make and it was kind of expensive. Bones, chicken dies, bam, you got a bone. Going to make a 4, and we're going to write down symbols stood for ideas, not sounds. So again, when you're seeing the writing in Chinese, Mandarin, the Chinese language is called Mandarin. So when you're seeing these symbols in Mandarin, those symbols are for ideas or, so they're for ideas, and that's mixed their words. Okay, so symbols are for ideas. They're not sounds. So it's not like, A, B, C, D, E, not like the alphabet. All right, next one. Make a new bullet. We're going to write down Zhao. And then we're going to write down 1027 to 771 before common era. So let's write down Zhao, 1027 to 771 before common era. We're just going to talk about the Zhao in general. So we're not going to split this up between a Western and Eastern Zhao. We're kind of just going to talk about the Zhao, just kind of in general, and that dynasty. So the Zhao are going to further develop. And as the Zhao further develop, they start coming up with some ideas, such as when you have an emperor and emperor's in charge. Why is that emperor in charge? Well, they came up with the idea called mandate from heaven. Go ahead and make a 1. Write down mandate from heaven. Mandate from heaven basically says, hey, I'm the emperor because God says I should be the emperor. Okay, so that's what a mandate from heaven is, as your ability to rule everybody comes from the fact that God says that you should be in charge. So that's called a mandate from heaven. You were divinely chosen to be the person in charge. Now, after you have mandate from heaven written down, make an equal sign. So it's still on 1. So still on 1, we got 1, mandate of heaven. Then make an equal sign and write down divine rule. Divine, once again, just means like a god or gods rule. Okay, so it's basically just like, hey, the gods say I should be in charge, or God says I should be in charge, or this particular God says I should be in charge. That's divine rule. Okay, so it's just basically saying, hey, God say I should be in charge. That's what I'm in charge for. Now, the problem, of course, with saying that your rule comes from the gods themselves is that anytime something bad happens, let's say there's a typhoon, earthquake, some type of natural disaster, massive flooding, those disasters are blamed on you as the ruler, because clearly typhoons and massive flooding, those are all caused by God being angry at you. So that means whenever something bad happens, since you said the gods put you in charge, therefore, whenever anything bad happens, it must be because the gods are angry with you. So disasters could be blamed on the rulers. Go ahead and make it 2. And write down disasters could be blamed on the rulers. If a dynasty was particularly weak at some point in time, that would mean that there would then be a large rebellion against them. And then that dynasty, that family, would then be overthrown, and a new family would then take over. So you can see over here in the pictures that we have up here on top, that's a jade disc up there. So at the very top is the jade disc. And on the bottom side, we have a bronze sword and a bronze helmet. So you can kind of see the bronze down there, and you can kind of see the jade up top. Now, during the Zhao time period, before the year 0 here, they did have a system of feudalism. So we talk about feudalism with Japan, about how you had an emperor, but the emperor didn't really have all that much power. A lot of the power was these various lords that owned their own land and their own armies. We also see this in China at this time period as well, where, yes, there is an emperor, and technically they're in charge, but there's a lot of these lords with their own armies, and they're loyal to the emperor, but they do have their own military forces and can rebel if they want. The Zhao do introduce coined money, so we start seeing coins kind of come around this time period. So we start seeing that. So instead of just doing a system of trade where it's like, hey, I'll give you this sword for that toilet, instead people start using money to exchange goods. We also see an improvement of transportation and roads and canals. So we start seeing the Huang kind of get built up a bit. And there's also something called the Grand Canal, which goes towards Beijing, which brings like water and such to the area. So we do kind of see that come around this time period. We'll also see iron making will start to get introduced as well at this time period. So we'll also see iron making kind of come in towards the year 0 here. kind of in the 500-ish before Common Eras, we'll start seeing iron start being developed. So they were kind of at bronze in the 1000s, and now they're getting to iron in the hundreds here. All right, let's go and stop there for today.